John from Ripewave Audio back again with the Fosi Audio ZD3, but this time for the purpose of doing some op-amp rolling. And this is something I've never done before, but this device has the capability. It's not terribly expensive to buy some op-amps and give it a try. And there's been a lot of videos out on op-amp rolling, particularly for the ZD3. And you see these videos and they're all over the place. You can go out and search. There's a lot of them out there. And people say night and day difference. And others say, no big deal. And I need to figure out for myself where I sit. What really matters is how it sounds to you. What can you discern? Now with this, we figured out our process for evaluating the op-amps. And we'll go through that as part of this video. We'll show you what some of the options are out there, look at some of the specifications of op-amps and what those really mean. And the whole idea is to give you some information to help you make your own decision, and perhaps you can have a little fun with this yourself. As we said before, if you think about the components that deliver the biggest sonic improvement for your system, number one is your room. Is your room set up in a way that is going to have the right amount of reflections, that it is conducive for audio playback? Is it the right size? And then the next, to look at your speakers. As far as what you can buy as a component for your stereo, the speakers are number one, but they come after the room itself, and followed by other components like your receiver, amplifier, integrated amplifier, and then finally your digital to audio converters, your DACs, if you're going to go external like the ZD3. So it's generally accepted that a DAC might have the least impact on improving your sound quality, but as we showed in the previous video, that it may be the more affordable way to go to see some improvement on your system. We're trying to find out is if you change out those op-amps inside of this unit, do you even take it a notch higher? So we have our ZD3. Now this is not an expensive unit, about $190. It was introduced to the market last year. It's a 2-channel unit, so you're not going to get multi-channel out of this. You can hook it up to, like what we've done, a MacBook computer or any other source you want. It even accepts Bluetooth, but if you were looking for the best sound quality, I do recommend a wired connection, as we have done. And this does have a lot of different inputs, and we can study that previous video we did that goes into this in depth. It has balanced and unbalanced outputs. Your unbalanced is going to come at 2.5 volts, root mean squared, or 5 volts for the balanced connections. And as we can see in this illustration that Fosi Audio puts out, it does support swappable op-amps. And they even show this further in a graphic, and they give you 5 examples on their website, different op-amps. And we went and put some prices we could find on the internet. Of course, those vary from piece to piece, but they range anywhere from $1.50 up to $86 a piece. And sometimes you have to buy these in pairs, because if you're replacing the balanced outputs, you need 2 of them. And if you're replacing the unbalanced single-ended output, you just need 1 to try this. Now, this is not the only DAC out there that supports swappable op-amps. We showed a couple of them in the last video, like the Topping DS10 and the Burson Audio Composer 3 XP, and there's others out there. Now, some of these, like Topping, said, don't go and change these yourself, but it looks like Burson and a few others, including Fosi, actually recommend you just go out and try this for yourself, and you don't have to be a professional. Now, you do have to be careful, and we'll talk about some of those things. I will point out that some of these op-amps, you go to the manufacturer's site like Burson, will show you how they feel that the sonic characteristics will be if you buy this. They're suggesting that you're going to hear more transparency, more detail, more color and texture, or dynamics and soundstage based off of the particular model you select. It's almost like when you used to buy film for SLR cameras, and they said, well, this has more grain, and this one's better for colors and all this, and this one's good for nighttime photography. It's sort of like that. And then the Fosi Audio site did suggest different op amps for whether you want a warmth or smooth sound, a natural, a clear sound, articulate, refined, rich, transparent detail. I don't know. I don't have all these adjectives to describe what I heard. I give a little more basic representation of whether the bass sounds better or the treble sounds better when you plug one in versus the other. We'll get into it. You use whatever language you want to describe what you're hearing. I'm just going to keep it very basic for this. Now we're trying, as far as those Bursons, the Vivid, not the classic, the red ones, which are the Vivid, and the Sparkos, as well as what this came with, which is one of the Texas Instrument chips. And we look at the field of what Fosi kind of recommends. It probably supports others. They're really looking for a dual channel op amp. Some of these are available in single channel, so you have to be careful not to buy the single channel op amp. The dual channel is what you want. So that's 2 channels of support. In the balance circuit, it's the 2 channels are used for positive and negative, versus on the unbalanced connection, that's going to be left and right use of those 2 channels. Now here are the ones, and I found the specification along with the cost on each of these. Actually, the Burson I saw individually purchased was $89. You can find them paired or individual. And we see some difference in the specifications between these. And I was quite surprised that the voltage gain on the Burson were some of the lowest values at 66 decibels versus that Texas Instrument chip that comes with the Fosi ZD3 is around $8 a piece. And that's their LME 49720. That was matched by the Sparkos, and I have one of the Sparkos chips here, op amps, which is a discrete op amp versus an integrated circuit, which the Texas Instrument is. Much smaller on those integrated circuit chips, the IC chips, versus a discrete. Both the Burson and the Sparkos are discrete chips. Now, there are those that are singing the praise of discrete, and that's why I chose those two. Just going off of what a lot of people say on the internet, try the discrete versus the integrated circuit and see if you can hear a difference. And a lot of people hear the difference. But I'm looking at this, and the Burson doesn't have as much voltage gain. Then I looked at a characteristic called slew rate, and this is important because this is how quickly it can move voltage, right? The faster chips will exhibit more of a dynamics. So you want a large number for your slew rate. So the fact that the Texas Instrument chip that comes with this is 20 volts per microsecond, that's pretty good. The Sparkos and the Burson, they give a range on their specification. For Sparkos, it's 12 to 20 volts per microsecond, and the Burson is 5 to 35 volts per microsecond. So we would assume those are about the same class on the slew rate. Between that and the Texas Instrument is our best guess here. But we look at total harmonic distortion plus noise. And again, what comes with this actually has the lowest total harmonic distortion at 0.00003% versus 0.305% on the Sparkos and the Burson. Not bad. I mean, JRC also matches that for low distortion. I still call that distortion really low and probably below what you could actually hear. Now, another important spec is the gain bandwidth, and you want a wide bandwidth as much as possible. Now, 55 megahertz is pretty good, again, with what comes with this as a stock chip. Now, Burson matches that at 55 megahertz, but the Sparkos is only 10 megahertz. Crosstalk values are not given for a lot of these. It looks like Sparkos and Burson rate pretty well here at 96 for the Burson and over 100 dBs for the Sparkos. We don't know what's in this particular unit. Now, as far as the size, the integrated circuits are going to be your smallest. Now, the discrete, you got to be careful that they're not too tall to fit in your case. Now, both of these will fit in here. Sometimes, too, the sockets for the op amps are so close together that something as wide as a Sparkos may not fit all together. But you could populate all three channels, the one unbalanced and the two balanced locations on this board, with either model, the Burson or the Sparkos, and they fit no problem as far as the spacing, and it will all work. And the height of the chassis, you can put the cover on, no problem. So let's take a look further on this. When you get these chips, it's very important to note where pin 1 is. Now, I recommend going into the manufacturer's website. The Sparkos website does say that there's a little, almost like a gold L in the corner where pin 1 is. And on the Burson, there's a curved slot which mirrors the curved slot that you see on some of the sockets. Now, on the ICs, like the Texas Instrument, you'll see a little circle that's a little shinier than the rest of the material, and that indicates pin 1. There's other conventions out there as well. Now, some of these packages do come with a little socket here. These are good if you are to solder something on to the board, and you could add that. But the board that we have here in the ZD3 already is socketed, so this isn't really needed. But where I find this helps is when you take one of these integrated circuits where the legs are not as strong, sturdy as what you get on the Burson and the Sparkos by default, that by putting this on one of those adapters, and you probably can't see this here, but now you've got a lot more sturdy legs and more to grab when you're pulling this in and out of the unit. Now, I swapped these a lot of times going back and forth, and I found it was very helpful to put it on the IC chips. And I didn't really need that adapter socket, the IC socket, for the discrete modules. But you pick a method that you like the best. So that's about pin 1. Now, our test setup. Now, I thought about this, and I'm like, geez, if I have to unplug this, take the cover off, and reinsert new chips, I'm going to forget in that time period it takes to do it. What does it take me, 10 minutes to swap it out? Maybe I can get good and swap it out in 5 minutes, 2 minutes, who knows? But my memory isn't that good in hearing one versus the other. Like, can I have it so I can easily just switch using my Duke switcher here, one channel versus the other? And I came up with an idea. Because the Fosi Audio has balanced outputs, I could put one chip in one slot and one in the other. So let's do this. And when you take this apart, there are 2 screws that have to remove the hex Allen wrench. I took those out. And once you take that out, you can also pull off the copper, orangey copper volume knob, pull that out. There's a nut that you have to remove. I got a socket wrench to take that off. And then once that's done, you can slide off the front bezel, just like so. And the other thing you have to do is, in here is a socket for the switch on the bottom. That has to be removed before you can slide it out. Now, this is what you can do, is take one of the stock Texas Instrument chips out, noting the orientation on the board. There's a little notch on the socket. That curved line lines up with pin 1. We can put this in. So here I have one of each chip on the board. So I have the right channel with one chip and the left channel another. And it doesn't matter what I really have currently installed on the unbalanced. I did listen to it for curiosity. And we can practice rolling different combinations. Texas Instrument versus Burson, Texas Instrument versus Sparkos, Burson versus Sparkos, and compare. And I rewired the Duke audio switcher so that the left channel went to the left channel of input 1 of the switch, and the right channel went to the left channel of input 2 of the switch. And I'm just going to use one speaker. And that way I can switch between op amps, keeping the left channel always, and listen to see if there's a difference in real time between the two, switching between channel input 1 and input 2, which is like taking left and right. But before I did that, if I have a stereo signal being fed by my MacBook, Apple Music, that's not a fair comparison. I want a mono signal coming out of my laptops. So how do I address that one? So I went out and found records that were recorded in mono, and I found a few that were out there, modern recordings, some old recordings from Nat King Cole from the 50s, and it's both channels together. But with this trick that I found on the MacBook, is you can actually go into the accessibility settings for audio and select play stereo as mono. That way I don't have to make sure that the recording is recorded in mono. It just sums the channels together. And that made it a lot easier for me. I could go out and find tracks that I really knew well, that had a lot of bass, that had a lot of cymbals, jazz music, rock music, techno music, and tried different types to see if I could have a difference. I could listen, and I did the different pairs here. Like in this case, I've got the Sparkos in the right channel and the Texas Instrument in the left channel. And we went back and forth. And I did this many different times, and it's important to try it with different music. So what do you think I heard when I compared these three components together? Nothing. I was going A to B, A to B. And I brought other people from my family in to listen. I said, can you hear the difference? It's like, did you even switch it? Yes, I switched it 3 times. I didn't hear it. Well, this really bothered me because I listened over and over again other videos that they said this was like night and day. I plugged this and I could hear a clear difference. I think, is my ears that bad? But my other family members couldn't hear a difference either. And I said, well, how am I going to do this? I want to hear what everybody else is hearing. Well, I'm doing this differently. So let's go back to a 2-channel setup like I had originally. But I still need something to compare it against. I won't be able to compare against the left and right on this if I'm stereo. I'm going to go in, I'm going to take out the original Texas Instrument chip. In this case, I'm going to match up and, of course, make sure the pin is in the right direction. If these are in the wrong direction, you might destroy the op amp, or you might destroy other components on the board. So you don't want to do that. Always make sure your pin one's in the right spot. So with the same op amp in the left and right channels for the balanced output, I then tested it with the original setup I have. And what I was going to use for comparison is my Emotiva. And when I put this in with the stock chips, what I heard, I could swap between the Fosi Audio and the Emotiva. What I heard was the Emotiva was clearly better. The 2 tracks I was particularly going between was from the John Hyatt's slow turning album, Feels Like Rain. It's got some nice cymbal crashes in there, and it has some good bass. But the one I really like to play is Dreams from Fleetwood Mac, the Rumors album. Those 2 tracks, I think, gave me a good sampling of things I wanted to listen for. I'm going back and forth, back and forth. The Emotiva was clearly better. Now, not significantly better. So if Emotiva was a 10 for the bass extension and for the clarity of the treble and those cymbal crashes, that I could use as the reference because it was better than the Texas Instrument chip in both cases. Then I could compare. How much did it change when I swapped over to the Texas Instrument chip? And it changed a little bit. It seemed a little duller, not as crisp as the Emotiva. But I did think that the bass still sounded pretty good and the treble still sounded pretty good, just a little more muted. Now, these were level matched, so we're playing at the same volume, just felt it was a little more muted. Then I swapped out and put the Sparkos in. Well, this time, I thought the Sparkos had a little more, I could hear a little more bass extension. It was closer to the RMC1 from Emotiva, but not quite as good. But the treble was, more like what I heard from the Texas Instrument. And then when I put the Burson chip in, the V7 Vivid Pro, I don't think it did as well on the bass, but did better on the treble. So the Texas Instrument was kind of in the middle as far as like an 8.5 for the treble and the bass, versus Sparkos was a little less on the treble, a little more on the bass than the Texas Instrument. And the Burson was the other way around, a little better on the treble, a little less on the bass. So I guess that's what people are hearing when they say they hear a difference. And if you don't have something like the Emotiva as a reference, now I don't know what Emotiva has, if they have an op amp in there and which one they're using, but to me, it was clearer, the sound stage and everything was a better experience. But there's nothing wrong with these other chips, just not quite as good. So if I never compared them, I would have said the Fosi is great. All these chips are great. Maybe I would prefer the Sparkos a little bit more because I'm more attracted to bass than treble. So I might choose that over the Burson. But there's nothing wrong with that Texas Instrument chip as an integrated circuit. Now, one thing about the discretes, they generate more heat. So if you don't want that heat factor, that's why there's a big heat sink on the Burson, I would stay away from it. So that's my impression of this op-amp rolling. The good news, it's not an expensive thing to do. Treat it as a hobby. Have fun with it. Try different ones. Maybe you'll hear something more than I did. I just gave you my experiences and how I went about my test, trying it in mono and listening side by side with those left and right channels with that quick switch, but then moving it into a stereo realm, I could start to notice more of a difference when comparing against my known reference, the RMC1. What do you think? How would you go about this? What do you think you would hear? And if you've experienced this for yourself, what is your preference? Do you think there's a difference between the op amps? Now, when we look on reviews, I said from different internet reviewers, some praise this, some even show graphs with some differences, particularly in the high frequencies. But then you go on Amir's site, and he's like, no noticeable difference between op amps. Danny Ritchie, he put it in. He's like, wow, this is like the most affordable upgrade you can do. This is great. I would recommend. He was using the Sparkos chip. Everybody feels a little differently about this. So I can't say conclusively, but for a little bit of money, you can roll these, have a little fun with it. I just recommend setting up a test for yourself where you can clearly compare very quickly by moving a switch. That's ideal. If you're just sitting on your couch and it takes you 10 minutes, 5 minutes to swap op amps, I think you're going to forget what you really heard. So that's my advice. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Be sure to hit that bell notification. And we do hope to see you back here real soon. And until then, keep evolving your audio experience.